Hey guys, I'm JW Weatherman, and I want to give you the lowdown on a project I created, Cypherpunk University. Cypherpunk University came about after I got sick and tired of seeing all the scams in the cryptocurrency space. I realized that none of these scams would exist if people understood the foundational economic principles behind wealth creation. So I distilled my 20 years of experience in the Silicon Valley startup space and my studies of Austrian economics to give people all the tools they need to understand how wealth is actually created, and also how to avoid all the scams in crypto and finance in general. In this course, you're going to get 3 hours worth of content covering all the logic behind wealth creation, an hour of my time where you and I can speak live about any questions that's on your mind, access to Cypherpunk University Forum where you can network with other intelligent people, and it's just a really good time. This course will destroy all the fallacies that keep people from the only effective path to creating wealth. It will transform anyone from dumb money into smart money. So go check it out now at jwweatherman.com/class. Become a beast. jwweatherman.com/class.
Is your child defiant, independent, annoyingly inquisitive? After a long, hard day of following the rules, who wants to deal with troublesome kids? 49% of children suffer from oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD. Symptoms of ODD include independent thought, rampant creativity, and failure to submit to authority. But now there's a solution. The good people at Pilfer can help you with their time-release, once-daily capsule, Compliacin. Your child won't be able to form his own opinions, let alone express them. It maintains your child's ability to go to a state-run school and perform simple tasks around the house. You won't have to worry about parenting, and the school won't have to deal with your kid asking questions. Compliacin. You'll go from this.
Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do! Quit telling me what to do!
To this.
Good morning, Mother. I love going to school. And this week we're learning all about how the government is our federal family and they're here to help us.
Compliacin. Talk to your school psychiatrist and ask for it by name.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network, on theconsciousresistance.com, on swellpodcast.org. So today I have JW Weatherman coming in from Silicon Valley. He's a cypherpunk, crypto-anarchist, voluntarist, and agorist, and he's the programmer of the website MathBot.com. And you can also find his podcast, JW Weatherman Bitcoin Show, and look for that on any podcatcher apps, and you'll probably find it. I think he's also on YouTube, right? Same name, JW Weatherman Bitcoin Show.
Yeah, that'll bring it right up.
Same name, yeah. And so yeah, we're gonna discuss how he became a cypherpunk and a crypto-anarchist, and why he created MathBot, and why it is challenging the government schooling system, and why he's targeting it to homeschoolers and unschoolers. So yeah, looking forward to getting to all that. So yeah, JW, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I heard about you first on the Tom Woods show recently, and like many people, I who have homeschooling their kids, I checked it out, and I checked it out with my 8-year-old son who loves. He loves programming. He loves math. He loves chess. He's that kind of kid, and so he loved it. He really enjoyed it, and so yeah, looking forward to hearing or looking forward to seeing it improve. I know it does have some bugs as any program and website does in the beginning stages. It's not easy to create something from scratch.
Yep, totally.
Which he's learning, by the way, about programming and how intricate. How you have to attend to every single detail, and yeah. So we have. There's a couple of apps. I don't know if you're familiar with Scratch Junior, Scratch.
Oh yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Yep, good stuff.
Yeah. There's other stuff too, but yeah. So yeah, he's learning about that. So he's appreciating what it takes to be a programmer and to create something from scratch. So
yeah, excellent, man. Good deal.
And I'm also trying to encourage entrepreneurship, saying, maybe you can make money. Every kid wants, their parent to buy something, but then they have to understand that money is scarce, right? And you have to actually earn it by creating value, right? Giving people what they want, satisfying people's needs and desires. and that's how you make money. And maybe telling him, I told him a couple of times, maybe you can make an app, maybe you can make it, because he likes video games too, right? Maybe you can make a game that people like. So right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking to my 14-year-old son, and I'm doing an interview with him soon because he's been homeschooled, and he's a software programmer now that's working on MathBot as well. I'm actually not writing any of the code on MathBot these days. My son is, and
wow.
there's
Cool.
other open source contributors that are working on it. I designed it and got it off the ground, but at this point, there's much better programmers than me that are working on it, including my son.
Wow.
And so yeah, I'm gonna talk to him in a few days. And one of the things that I tweeted out on Twitter, just asking what kind of questions should I ask him, and one of the questions was something along the lines of how do you feel prepared to be an adult. Or how it was something along the lines of how are you going? Do you feel like you can survive in the world? Something along those lines. And so I was sitting around at dinner and looking at Twitter instead of talking to my family like I should have been. But that popped up. So I asked him, in front of my wife, and he was like, "Oh yeah, what are you talking about? I know how to write code. I know I'm not gonna have any trouble." So he's pretty confident, maybe a little too confident, but yeah, I mean, what a weird world to be a 14-year-old and know that you have a skill set that is so in demand that there's no question that you'll be able to take care of yourself and your family.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this, but government schooling is so antiquated. The idea that you have to go to a place, sit in a chair, open a book, and look at the teacher and regurgitate what they wanted to see on the test, and that's what education, and that's what you're going to need in like 20 years, right? When you're out in the real world, is amazing.
Yeah. I think their best angle there is that everybody's a drone, and you want to be a drone like everybody else, because that's how you'll be successful. And I think that that story is getting really, really long in the tooth at this point. But I honestly think that's what's behind the fear, the socialization fear. If you homeschool your kid, and one of the first things that anybody is going to say, you just walk up to somebody in the grocery store and say, "Hey, I've never met you before. I homeschool my kid." They're going to go, "Oh, socialization. Oh my God, socialization." And I think the fear behind that is like, oh, they might be different. They might be weird, because all of the other sheep have been ushered through the system that just crushes their spirit, makes them feel dumb, depressed, weird. And all those sort of things. And your kid might not be like that. So how is he going to get along with all these degenerates? When he's in corporate America in 15 years, on the verge of suicide, is he going to be like everybody else? So I think that's probably the best angle that they have at this point, is that, yeah, you'll have a miserable life and a miserable existence, but you'll be part of the herd. They should put that on the school crest at this point, I think.
I'm gonna quote you on that: dumb, degenerate, depressed. Say JW, not tell me what you really think. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in other words, yes. That's right. Exactly what happens. And people like my parents, especially my mother, would often say, how could you talk bad about government school or public school? You went through it and look where you are today. You're a successful person. You have a beautiful wife and kids, and you got, you're an acupuncturist and an herbalist, and you worked in a job for a couple of years, and what's wrong? What do you have to complain about? Yeah. And my response is always like, if a person was abused as a child, like let's say physically abused, and yet they grew up to be a successful, adult or business person, would you say, "Look at that, you got abused and you became successful. How could you complain about that?"
Right, exactly. Because the sewer, if you drag yourself through the sewer and somehow manage to get out of it, you need to look on the sewer with gratitude. No, I don't think so. Yeah, it's and the other thing I would say is that, you and I are older. I'm in my mid 40s. I know that schools, as bad as they were, and they were bad, like they were not great. Not very many of us, even if you went to a decent private school or a public school, came out more than semi-literate. Very few of us statistically had read a couple books, and very few of us in our generation, after graduation, ever pick up a book out of pleasure or out of just a desire to learn. Many of us do, our generation will pick up books if it's required for work, if we're kind of forced into it, which is exactly what we were trained to do in school. But now it is so much worse. The stuff that kids are being subjected to now is 5-10 times worse, in my view, than anything that we got subjected to. And for me, because I'm a math nerd, one of the best examples of that is the way that they teach math. We got a terrible version of math, made us hate math. They get a version of math that makes you just absolutely convinced that math is the worst creation that's ever come into existence. It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. It's irrational. It's just complete pain. And so, we filled out a form for the DMV, and we thought that was math. These kids are filling out a form for the DMV that asks questions that don't even make sense, that ask them 6 times, that make you go through this crazy procedure. What Common Core has done to the really terrible version of math that we experienced in government schools is really just impressive. Actually, it's really something to behold.
I think. Go ahead.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, that was
it. It's really a very spectacularly evil thing that they've done to math, and this has only happened in like the last 5-6 years. It was rolled out nationwide without any pilot, without any testing. They never said, hey, we're going to subject 100 million kids, over the next several years to this completely new way of teaching math, this whole new way of thinking about math, this whole new concept. We're going to do this to 100 million people. Let's try it on 30 and see how it goes. They did not do that. They came up with this crazy idea and they rolled it out. And it's truly miserable and awful. And if I was, sitting in a back room smoking cigars, sacrificing babies, trying to come up with the best way to just make a whole generation of people hate reason and logic, I could not do better than what they've done with Common Core for math. It's spot on. It's perfect.
I think one of the best phrases to encapsulate what they're teaching in school is call it government math. I think that's that's a simple way to say it. What does government do that's ever efficient, useful, effective, and good? Spends money wisely. Like is there such a thing? No, of course not. And so I think just saying that, like once the state takes hold of something, it just becomes wicked and corrupted and wretched and and decrepit and and it's so unfortunate that, like you said, it's getting worse. I don't think I remember actually really hating math, but I don't know, maybe I'm different because I'm a big chess player also. So some people say there's a link or not, I don't know, but and I'm also a big piano player. So, I don't know if that has any relation. But yeah, so logic really, to me, I love that kind of stuff. Logic, puzzles, logic games, programming type, activities that, I really enjoy that. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been a small percentage of us that could rise above, right? Where the government wonk puts a DMV form in front of us, and we can see past it and sort of see that there is logic and reason and beauty going on there. And as much as they try to crush our spirit, we can fill out those forms pretty quickly and then glean what's actually interesting, right? We can do something with Pythagorean's theorem, and they'll make us do it 278 freaking times with very slight variations. But we have the endurance. We can just push through that nonsense. And then it's at the same time go, wow, Pythagorean's theorem is pretty cool. So there's always been a small number of us that can do that.
Yeah.
What they're doing now is going to shrink that number of people even smaller. But yeah, I mean, it ultimately, if you can pierce through the veil of bureaucracy and nonsense, math is beautiful. It's just logic and reason, and exploration of how the universe fits together. Like what could be more appealing and interesting to the human mind than that? That's all we do. Like from the time that we wake up to the time that we go to sleep, we're trying to understand ourselves. We're trying to understand other people, nature. We're all obsessed with politics because we want to know how the world works.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea that there's a subset of people that are interested in logic and reason and exploring, shapes and, functions, things like that. It's only an idea that I believe is based in what we've experienced, where we've been subjected to something that's miserable, and a small percentage of us can put up with it. And because we're told that miserable thing is math, we believe a small percentage of people are good at math, but it's not. It's a small percentage of people that are willing to put up with just this wretched experience and still pull the light out of it at the end of the day.
Right.
And one of the ways that I think that is most damning of government schools is if you realize one thing about math, you'll realize that government schools, even in our generation, from the time that they started, they've never taught math, because math is exploring logic and reason and doing problem solving. And you and I never experienced problem solving. They never put a problem in front of us and said, this is a conundrum. I want you to think about how you would go about solving that. Not once. From anybody that's in their mid 40s and younger, they were only presented with a process and a procedure that if you blindly follow this process and procedure, it's like a sausage factory. Throw chunks of meat in, crank the thing, sausage come out. It is absolutely just following a procedure. So you don't get the chemical rewards, you don't get the pleasure, you don't get what we're hardwired to explore a problem, and if we solve it, we get a dopamine hit, right? So the idea that we could all have the same meat brain that rewards us as soon as we solve a problem, but only some of us actually enjoy solving problems, it's completely irrational. But what they did to us is they reduced that dopamine hit. They reduced that reward drastically by never really letting us problem solve. But what they're doing to the new generation is taking that concept and kicking it up on steroids. So now you have to learn 4 or 5 different procedures to solve the same problem. And the procedures, at least the procedures that they subjected us to, were reasonable, right? They were shortcuts, and it was a lot of crap, and it was a lot of carry the one stuff, which is completely optional. That's not math. That's a particular trick. That's fine. You can learn the tricks, but what you really want to do is you want to learn the problem and explore the space and come up with a solution. And then, maybe pick up some tricks to make it easier next time, whatever, that's fine. We were only shown tricks and how to do them in sequence. They're shown tricks that are stupid. When we were told to carry the one, it made sense. They're told that when they do 5 plus 4, they're going to do something stupid, like have you add 5 plus 2. Like it's necessary. It's not rational and logical. It's just more detailed process and procedure that I think it's actually intentional that it's not logical, because they really want you to hate it, because otherwise I can't imagine why they would do this sort of stuff. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, my son is 8, and I clearly see that his mind understands math much better than my daughter. She's 6, and but I don't think that's just an age thing. Like there's a lot of things that she does better than him. Like more physical things, actually. She's more physically developed, coordination, balance, that kind of thing. Gymnastics, ballet, dancing, that she does better than him. But with the intellectual stuff, math and chess, he understands a lot better and a lot clearer. And he actually surprises me, what kind of math he can do in his head. So, and also, he doesn't hate it, which is wonderful. Yeah. There's math everywhere, and also I was telling my wife recently that one of the best ways that you can teach your kids math and counting is to give them like an allowance, give them, or maybe money for some small tasks. And then they slowly have their own money. They're going to learn math because they're going to be constantly counting their money. Like my son knows exactly how much money he has.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another thing that is really a good idea is to reward kids.
Yeah.
So this is something that the government schools have done studies that's all over the place. If you present a problem to a kid and you say, if you master this subject, I'll give you $50, they will master it at a much higher rate than if you don't give them any reward. And that shouldn't be surprising to us, because I don't design stuff, I don't build stuff and write code and do all the work that I do security research, all that sort of stuff, just for the love of it. I mean, I do like it, but I also like being acknowledged. I like public praise, and I like money because I can buy stuff with it. And kids are not stupid. So if you reward them when they do good, including financial rewards, they do more of that. Now, of course, the government schools have had to come up with a ridiculous story. I mean, it's always a ridiculous story, right? But this one is one of the most ridiculous, and it reminds me of the you shouldn't homeschool your kids because of socialization thing. It's absolute lunacy. But what they've said is, like, we don't want to do that. Yes, we spend $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year per kid in government school. And we know that if we give them $50 for every A, their test scores go way, way up, right? And so for $500, we can have a huge impact. We know that. But here's the thing, citizen. If we do that, it will crush their love of learning, because if they work and learn for rewards, well, then they'll never know what it's like to learn just for the pure joy of learning.
Right.
Is that the most like Orwellian evil thing you've ever heard in your life? But I mean, what's sad is that has affected even a lot of homeschoolers that I talk to. Like, that piece of propaganda is so effective that it really has seeped into the culture in America pretty aggressively. I have rewarded my son a lot for doing difficult problems. And he still loves working on difficult problems. He just loves also getting rewarded for it. So, I think, that's going to be a very natural transition into his career as a programmer or whatever else he goes on to do, because that's how the world works, right? We only want to solve problems because we want to get rewarded. Like, I'll solve my own problems for a reward, but I might solve your problems for a reward too.
Right.
But I'm not going to just sit around all day, just, in my garage, like an idiot savant, just drawing on the walls, just having a great time. I don't know what these people think they're producing, but they're not producing that.
What you made me think of something. Oh yeah, the idea when people tell me sometimes I bribe my kids to do things, and I tell them I don't like that word bribe because it has such a negative connotation. But the idea, what you said, reward for doing a difficult task, I like that. To me, bribery is associated with, government and corruption and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
But also just giving an incentive for your children to act in a certain way, I think is wonderful. And that's exactly what we do, when we work at a job. We get paid. Who would work for free? I mean, very few people. Maybe there are some people, but most people, when they work, they want to get compensated, right? They want to get paid, and that's an incentive to work hard and be efficient and do good work and be productive, right? And I think that's completely natural, completely human, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. I mean, those are the sort of subtle things that leftists and government propagandists always do. They will take something and they'll use an opposite word for it. So you're right to hit on that, right? You're not bribing your kid. If you look up the definition of bribery, the reason that it has a negative connotation is that it's a payoff, right? It's paying somebody to do something dirty, right? You're bribing a judge. You bribe a judge. You bribe a policeman. Yeah. You don't bribe a kid to take out the trash. You reward a kid for being responsible and taking out the trash. And I think the other thing I would say about that is that you're totally right that is a natural transition into the workplace. But there's also this, especially when it comes to money, this weird idea that that kids shouldn't have anything to do with money. The reason that I solve problems is I want a world that works better for me. I want either software that works that I want to use that works better, or I want to solve other people's problems in exchange for them solving my problems, right? I will build software for you and your kids, but you better make some milk because I like it on my cereal in the morning, and we'll trade, right? Like I have a no milk problem, you have a no software problem. Let's work something out, right? So that's natural, right? That's good. It is the way that we are designed to function. And the idea that kids don't get that like kids will just solve problems for the joy of it is stupid. It's not joyful to solve problems in and of itself. There's pleasure in productivity, but it's because it's solving problems. And if you have somebody, it'd be like building a chair. And instead of saying, hey, you're going to learn how to cut 2x4s as we build this chair. And at the end, you're going to have a chair you can sit in, right? There's an inherent reward in that because you have a place to sit now. The government is saying, no, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you want to take a 2x4 and just cut 2 inches off of it. And then just cut 2 inches off of it and just do that all day until you have this nice big pile of 2x4. Oh, you don't love math? What's wrong with you? Well, maybe we can put you in a special program. Maybe we can medicate you. Actually, there's this weird side effect of this medicine that we're going to give you that also kind of turns you into a little girl if you're a little boy. But hey, if you don't love math, we really need you to give you a chemical lobotomy. It's absolutely insane.
Are you a chess player?
I have played a bit of chess. I'm not very good at it. Actually, my son is a pretty good chess player.
Did you learn? Who did you learn from? You or someone else? Friend?
He did not learn from me. I'm not good enough to have taught him as well as he learned. He learned from his grandfather.
Because the exact reason why I love chess, and how some people say, "Oh, I love word problems," or "I love puzzles," or like let's say a word problem, right? It's a whole big description of a situation. You got to figure out what's the solution, right? Well, to me, every single position of a chess game, you make a move. Well, first of all, before you make the move, that's a puzzle. What's the best move, right? Then your opponent moves, then your turn again. What's the best move? Every single position that you're presented with is a puzzle. You're constantly figuring out puzzles, and I find that to be very beautiful. Of course, it's so immensely complex as well. It's like we haven't even scratched the surface of this enormous complexity that is chess, even though it's been playing for like a couple of centuries already. But yeah, so
yeah, and all humans enjoy problem solving.
Yeah.
And so if you do understand that math is just problem solving, then it doesn't make sense that some of us would enjoy it and others of us wouldn't. I definitely think some of us have just more of an affinity for drawing numbers and shapes. But look, Einstein just sat around and thought about these problems, right? Like a lot of what he did was thought experiments that had nothing to do with equations. And he wasn't very good at putting equations to the thought experiments. A lot of times he had to work with somebody else to do that. But he would be able to just sit and think clearly and problem solve. No pencil, no paper, no writing involved. And no equations, but then he could work with somebody else to formalize it. But that is math. And he was a brilliant mathematician, even though he wasn't all that great at putting symbols on paper.
Right. Yeah. When I was in 7th grade, this kid who was generally considered to be kind of like an idiot savant, although he wasn't really dumb. He just didn't care what other people think of it. I thought of him. He was like, a radical kid with the, the ripped jeans and the, Metallica t-shirt, long hair. He just didn't care what he looked like. But he's a genius, like really smart kid. In 7th grade, he gave me the book. He recommended I read the book Hyperspace by Michio Kaku. So starting in 7th grade, I got into theoretical physics and cosmology and astronomy. And oh my God, it opened my eyes and I loved it. I read that, and I read Cosmos, and I read, A Brief History in Time, Stephen Hawking. And then, I just read a bunch of books, and then, Michio Kaku wrote a bunch more books. I read those. so go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. I mean, the part of the reason I'm really passionate about helping people understand that there aren't math people, there aren't people that love math and people that don't, is that it's going to be really hard for anybody to be successful moving forward unless they learn how to program. You don't want to go into truck driving right now because Elon Musk and a team of developers are working on a self-driving semi-truck, right? You also don't want to go into being a lawyer right now, because there's teams of developers working on creating things like smart contracts where there's no need for a judge because everything is automatically executed based on a set of circumstances. That's going to cut into the lawyering field quite a bit. There are, even if you said, okay, I want to be a heart surgeon. Well, great. You know who is going to make a bigger impact on heart surgery than heart surgeons? It's the guys that are writing the code in the robotics so that the heart is mapped properly, so that I mean, most of the time at this point, robotic assisted surgery, come on. It's a robot doing the surgery and a human making some decisions just because we haven't gotten around to writing that code yet. Yeah. Right. So every job that you can think of has an expiration date, and that expiration date is accelerating rapidly, except for problem solving and doing software development. And that is because software development, we are in like this new industrial revolution. We're still in the early stages of this information technology revolution. And, a lot of people are slowly getting it, right? They're slowly realizing, what, the best thing about my pickup truck is the software in it that does all of this crazy stuff, that gives me a 360-degree view, that automatically kicks in the transmission brake and all of this other stuff so that I don't have to be a brilliant truck driver anymore. It's not really the hardware, right? We've kind of had the 8-cylinder engine figured out for a while, but we can make that feel like a freaking spaceship and solve all kinds of problems so you can just sit back and relax in your climate-controlled environment. And it's all software. The nice thing about that is that we've barely scratched the surface on all the problems that we can solve with software. It's something that if you're taught properly, it totally appeals to the human mind, and it makes you super powerful. I mean, it makes you feel like a freaking wizard when you can go at a problem and you can solve it. And now that it doesn't matter how big the problem is with software, you can solve the tiniest problem, but you just solved it for 7 billion people. That is incredible. It feels so good. I think it's really important that people slowly realize that software is fun. Math is fun. They're actually synonymous. There's no difference between math and software development. If you create a function that takes two numbers and puts them together and you call it add, ADD, or you have a piece of paper and a pencil and you have the plus symbol and you just mentally know that plus symbol is a function that means ADD, it's the same thing. It's just a matter of this different symbols that you're choosing to use, and whether you have to execute that function manually all the time as well. But I mean, there really isn't a difference. And even the best mathematicians now, they're all software developers because it puts a lot more power in their hands. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm kind of optimistic. I'm also, I'm a cypherpunk, which means I'm a guy that's an ANCAP, a crypto-anarchist, whatever, but sees a real turning point in the 90s when encryption leaked out of the NSA and got in the hands of academics and regular people. Many actually recognized at that point there was a turning point, that it was inevitable that government was going to fall, because the moment that we had encryption in our hands, we were going to be able to communicate freely with each other. This whole threat of surveillance and all of that sort of stuff, it had an expiration date that was rapidly approaching. The whole concept of freedom of assembly was now non-negotiable, right? We weren't going to have to negotiate with governments and hope that they were going to honor some piece of paper in order to give us freedom of assembly. It was inevitable. Being able to execute contracts and have conversations and exchange financial instruments like Bitcoin is a result of this 30-plus year movement to build this digital Galt's Gulch where we could have a foothold and then bring freedom from there out to the physical space. I think these guys have made a ton of progress, and I think that's where I see a lot of hope. And I see a lot of hope in the fact that as people learn how to write code, They know that there's not a distinction between code and speech. They're not going to be able to go after guys like Cody Wilson anymore and say, oh, what you're doing is illegal. We got to shut down this site. Because if you know that code is just speaking a language that's understood by computers, you get really uncomfortable when the government says you can't talk about this or you can't express those ideas. And the empowerment of the individual is insane. I mean, 20 years ago, I was reading, what was that guy? I can't remember, but there was this New York Times columnist that was just ranting about how RPGs were completely changing the game, right? You could have a $20 million helicopter and a $200 RPG, rocket propelled grenade, and they were basically on level playing field. And, you know, the New York Times, they're just weeping and gnashing their teeth in terror over this reality that the individual is getting empowered at such a rapid rate that governments are no longer going to be able to basically exploit people because it's not going to be cost effective. I think things like Bitcoin completely change the game. But the other thing that changes the game is that when people can write software, that is an RPG on steroids, right? That is like being able to create a million digital RPGs at the press of a key. And that's a world that is going to be very different from the world that we're in right now. And it's going to come about because people are going to become just much more powerful through software.
Beautiful. I love that. So before we skipped over the the opening, but real quick, just to give people an idea how you came to the idea of cypherpunk and crypto-anarchism, and why you created MathBot.
Yeah, so I think it was, I can't remember what year it was. I read a book by Ron Paul, and Ron Paul referenced Ludwig von Mises. And I absolutely hated Ron Paul's book. I think he's a great guy, but I absolutely hated his book. But this footnote caught my attention. And so I read Human Action cover to cover, I think 3 times in a row. Whoa. I was just completely blown away. I mean, Human Action is one of my favorite books of all time. It's my favorite like parenting book. It's my favorite management book. I could have saved myself a lot of years of reading stupid leadership books had I read Human Action sooner. Wow. And it's by far my favorite economics book. So that completely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And eventually I found Murray Rothbard and started reading his stuff. I think the first thing I read by Murray Rothbard was Anatomy of the State. Highly recommend that essay. It is definitely an eye-opener. A few years after that, actually, I sold a company. For about the last decade, I've been creating software startups and then eventually selling them or finding a way to, take the money and run. And I had just got done doing that. This was a few years ago. When my wife was helping out some kids and also, working, we were kind of fans of Khan Academy. I was using that a bit with my son when he was 11, 12. Mm-hmm. And when Common Core came out, Khan Academy started changing. And also the kids that my wife was helping in the neighborhood learn math. They were going to government schools, so they needed to start learning this Common Core stuff. And so my wife looked into it. She actually majored in math in college, and it is big math nerd, I guess. And we were both just completely disgusted. Our anniversary dinner, was completely. We're sitting in a nice restaurant, and all we did was like scream at each other. It's like finding out that the government is abusing kids in some way that's so insidious and subtle that it really could result if it's not fought back, and if it's not. I don't know. I mean, there's just something really dark and evil about making kids hate logic. I don't know what that world looks like, but those are kind of so on my optimistic side, I see people learning software development, the rapid empowerment of individuals and the defunding of government through things like Bitcoin. On my pessimistic side, I see millions of kids right now going through programs that I could not design better to make them completely hate and despise logic and reason. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, that's an experiment. Like I said, they didn't try it with 30 kids so we could see what kind of monsters and hateful creatures are produced. Now they're doing it to millions of kids. And my guess is that they can't do more than make people hate math. My guess is that they've just dialed that in better. But I really don't. I'm not looking forward to seeing what kind of person that produces after 20 years of that sort of mental abuse. So it feels like a much more I don't know. It feels more and more like there's a we're either going to go really bad or really good, right? And my guess is that it's going to be both, right? Some people are going to really end up in a bad place, and the suicide rate and the depression rate is going to continue to skyrocket among certain groups of people. And on the other hand, I think there's going to be other groups of people that are able to just fully break away from that nonsense and hopefully, rescue everybody else in the long run.
Yeah, on the one hand, you're right. Like, it is quite depressing in how many people do send their kids to government schools, and actually think it's necessary to be a productive person in society. But we do what we can to improve the world, and you're certainly doing quite a bit, with this program, with this website. And spreading the word through your podcast. I'm doing what I can through my podcast, my YouTube channel, my blog, and everything. And that I think that's the best we can do: spread ideas, right? And hopefully, the more people read them, the more people listen, and then they talk to their friends, and the word spreads that way. I think that's the best way. We have to use the power of our words and the power of the written word and the spoken word to convey these messages in ways that are engaging and that people would understand and want to listen, and also hopefully it will improve their lives if they do listen, right? So that's kind of, that's my goal, and I'm sure that's your goal too. We want to improve people's lives and help people to understand. More specifically, you're targeting education, but I also encompass a lot with my podcast, in general, of just I cover a lot of different topics, interview a lot of different people, wide variety of topics on basically how the state makes everything worse.
Yeah. No, statism is absolutely the modern religion,
right.
And it's it's probably the worst one we've come up with so far. We're not sacrificing babies on top of a big pile of stones at this point, but we are, sacrificing our kids in a lot of other, slightly more subtle, but certainly on a larger scale than anything the Aztecs were doing. I don't. What would be worse, sacrificing one baby every full moon or putting them all through government schools? I think if I had to pick, I'd pick the former.
I can understand someone listening to that and like, what? JW supports Aztec human sacrifice? How is that possible?
Oh man,
talk about taking out of context. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I don't vote, but I might vote for that one if it ever comes up on the ballot. We're going to sacrifice one child per full moon, but we're going to shut down the public schools. That's going to be a really hard box for me not to check.
Make human sacrifice great again. Hey, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, to get back to the story of MathBot story that you asked. So, my wife discovered that, and we were both just completely outraged. And so for that basically from that point on, it was more or less my obsession to try to figure out a way to teach math, very much inspired by Euclid. Euclid's Elements is this incredible book that was basically the math curriculum from before Alexander the Great to after Albert Einstein. It's incredible. Like, this is how every mathematician through that huge 2,000-year span of history learned mathematics. And of course, government schools immediately changed that and got away from it. But what's beautiful about Euclid's Elements is that he starts out by saying, okay, assume that you can draw a straight line and that you can draw a circle. And from there, he just slowly adds additional questions, additional problem spaces that you can explore to the point where you get well beyond, Pythagorean's theorem, and learn about all kinds of really interesting aspects of spatial reality. And so I wanted to do that, but I wanted to also just completely blur the line and make it very clear that there isn't a difference between math and programming. And so that's what eventually became MathBot.com. And so what you do is you program a robot that just moves around the screen and moves blocks. So if you're a homeschooler, you probably know about like Math UC or Singapore Math, where it's very visual and tactile. If you imagine that, except you don't touch it because you tell a robot to go pick up those objects and move them around, is essentially what we're trying to do and what we are doing. Yeah, I mean, the goal is it's completely free. Anybody can play it. The goal is to make it so easy and, relatively speaking, fun. Although it's hard problems, right? It's brain work. It's not Angry Birds, so we're not going to be able to compete with those guys. We're just, checking out first-person shooters or whatever. But the goal is to make it so relatively fun and so easy and incremental that it's just clear to everybody that there's no need for public schools. There's no need for private schools. They can all get out of pretending to teach math, because kids are going to be showing up, 7, 8 years old. They're all going to be programming recursive functions. Their teachers aren't going to know what the hell is going on, because they're so much further advanced in mathematics than they are. And then I think parents will realize just how obsolete this whole system is. So that's the goal, just to make it painfully and clearly obvious that they never were teaching math, and that if you want to learn math, there's this website and it's totally free, and it's easy. The Bitcoin thing came in just only about a year ago. So I was working on MathBot for quite a while, and the problem that I ran into, which comes back to the rewards thing, was that we started doing user testing. So I had like 200 to 300 kids. I put them in front of MathBot. This was about 18 months ago, roughly. And we were feeling really good about it. And it was going well. The problem was that most of the kids did well when it was very, very easy. And even though it was just one more incremental step, as it got harder, the kids that had parents that told them that the kids that knew that they were going to be rewarded if they pulled off something impressive or if they got to a certain level, all those kids thrived and they pushed through those difficulties. But we could see that the kids that didn't have that, very few of them, of the 300 kids that we put through this, 2 or 3, right? 2 or 3 pushed through the challenges and actually got to the point where we wanted them to get. And so because our goal is not just to go after the kids that already have parents that are going to discover Euclid's elements, and they're going to put, a more or less decent curriculum together themselves. We want to destroy public schools. We want to see like every public school and private school, actually, because those guys aren't much better. Like, I will know that I'm successful when I see a math teacher standing on the side of the street saying, "We'll work for food." So at that point, we were frustrated, because, it would be fine for the 10, 15% that are already going to kill it anyway. But we kind of were struggling. It wasn't a shelved project, but it was a skeleton crew. I'd brought it down to just like one developer. Wasn't really sure what to do with it because of that problem. And then I got my original career and my background has always been in software security. So I ended up looking at Bitcoin and got totally obsessed about that about a year ago. And that's when I realized that Bitcoin can actually solve my MathBot problem. So because I want every kid in the world to learn math, but I need them to be rewarded to do that. And they don't always have parents that are interested or capable or have thought this things through, or maybe they've been indoctrinated by the government to think rewards are bad. But the idea in MathBot soon, you can't do it right now. Now it's totally free. But soon you'll have the option to pay $50 for algebra, for example, and we will take $45 and give it to the kid as they pass levels. So if they're working on division, $20 from the parent or grandparent goes into MathBot, $18 comes out, trickled to the kid as they master new topics. I think if we pull that off, which we should have that done within a few months, then there's an opportunity for charities to step in and say, okay, if this inner city kid masters calculus, we'll give him $200, right? It's not very much money because it's not that hard, actually. It just needs to be enough incentive to just play that next level. then I think we'll be able to scale the way we want to and address a lot of the kids that would otherwise be left out. And it's not just the charitable aspect, but there's usually somebody in any kid's life that wants them to be really good at math, and if they can just throw $50 at it and then get notified when the kid crushes some linear algebra problem, I think that'll be a great experience for everybody. And that is not, that could not happen pre-Bitcoin. Credit cards, that wouldn't be possible. Direct deposits, whatever electronic payment methods are out there, none of them would allow for that user experience until Bitcoin.
Wow. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, definitely. And also the idea that you mentioned of wanting to make government schools obsolete, to me, that's a wonderful way to deal with the state. When people think anarchists are, violent and want chaos and disorder, I just tell people, well, I want the state to go the way of Blockbuster, right? Or cord phones. Did we get rid of those by rebellion and revolution and assassination? No, of course not. You just evolve. You develop technologies that make it obsolete and irrelevant. And that's exactly what you're doing, and that's exactly what we have to do to create a better world. Is just make the next best thing, make better. We're constantly making better, and it will just be so glaringly obvious that the government schooling system is a dinosaur. It's antiquated. It's ancient. it's an ancient method. It's like one of my favorite analogies. I saw a cartoon of you see a horse and buggy, and is trying to rein in a spaceship, and the spaceship is symbolizing Earth, and the horse and buggy is symbolizing. I think it's the FCC trying to control the internet.
Right. Yep.
Like that's
exactly.
kind of the way I see. Anything that the state does, and then try to, I don't know, like with Cody Wilson, for example, trying to take away his plans, his blueprints to 3D print a gun. They try to sue him and steal his money and take away his ability to spread the information. But guess what? The information's already out there. So what are you going to do about it? Nothing. You can't do anything about it. The cat's out of the bag. Yeah. And so it just demonstrates the complete incompetence and inadequacy of the violence of the state.
Yep, totally. Yeah, actually, speaking of Cody Wilson, one of my favorite podcast episodes is about 2 hours. It was really great. I just hung out with Cody Wilson, and we talked about it. Wasn't just Ghost Gunner the whole time. We talked about that, but the second full hour was all just talking about religion, occasionalism, free will. It was a really great discussion, and that was up on YouTube. My most popular interview, I think, by far, and they just deleted it last week, or maybe it was just last week they deleted it, and they said that it was because we were trying to sell firearms on YouTube. It was against their terms of service.
What? Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so sad.
Yeah, totally. It is still on my podcast though, so if you search for JW Weatherman in any podcast catcher, it'll come up and you can still listen to it. And it's never going to be deleted, right? It's going to be around. They've made it a little bit more difficult to get access to, but yeah, the cat's out of the bag on this stuff. It has been a slow march for the cypherpunk movement, but the Holy Grail was always creating secure electronic cash. And we now, have that with Bitcoin. It is really amazing that they can't shut it down. I mean, they really cannot stop it. And what's so incredible about that is that, we know that the state is funded by having a monopoly on money, being able to print money, being able to prevent individuals from creating anything that competes with it because their money is terrible, but they can use violence to prevent it. Bitcoin is something where it is a competing money, but they can't figure out how to shut it down. So to me, it's inevitable that something that people would actually choose because it just functions better as money. In my view, it functions far better than gold. Gold had security flaws that led to banking and central banking. But Bitcoin is actually something that people would choose to use because it works better. And it gets to compete because they can't stop it from competing. To me, that means it's inevitable that Bitcoin takes over and central banking goes away, the Federal Reserve goes away. Ron Paul is not going to have to be 90 years old still trying to get the Federal Reserve to do an audit, because that was never going to happen anyway. They're just not going to exist because people aren't going to want to use the US dollar. And then it gets really interesting from there, because we know that when people use cash, they very rarely pay income tax. They very rarely pay sales tax. So a digital private electronic cash, if it's just as good as paper transactions, and it's actually far better, but if it was just as good, we're already to the point where the state is almost entirely defunded, just with that one innovation.
Oh yeah, so true. When I think about the state in trying to control the spread of Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency, I think of somebody with a sword trying to stab in a fog or a cloud.
Yeah.
To me, that demonstrates the complete inadequacy and incompetence of the state in dealing with anything related to the internet. You just can't control it, no matter how hard you try. You shut down the Silk Road, and you put the guy on trial, Ross Ulbricht, and you say, he did all these horrible things, put him away for multiple life sentences, and guess what? 10 more websites pop up, which is more expansive and sell many more things than Silk Road ever did. And then that's one of the best examples of why you can't, like playing whack-a-mole, right? You can never get them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they really only have one. They only have one trick, and that's to run around with AR-15s and kick in your front door.
Right. And
with encryption technology, if they can't find where you're at, if they can't find your front door, it's game over for them. They really don't have any other. This whole idea that the CIA and NSA are brilliant and cutting edge, and no matter how many Jack Ryan, Amazon. TV shows come out, everybody knows the brain trust is in Silicon Valley. They're not in Washington, D.C., right? Like the brilliant software developers are not working for the government. And that story is, just doesn't make any sense. So, they're not, it's not what they're good at. It's what we're good at, actually. And that's why we're going to win.
Yeah, I mean, again, what's the incentive? Like maybe you do have some developers, just like the state always wants to have the intelligentsia, the professors. They always want the wise people to be on their side. But again, once they're taken out of the market, out of the free market, and put into the state, what's their incentive to continue to be productive? Right, to continue to innovate, the incentive is lost, and exactly why people, the electronics industry has been such a wonderful thing, and it has exploded these past couple of decades, is because they pretty much have no barriers, right? No restrictions, no regulations, as compared to other industries, right? Like automotive industry and whatever, let's say private schooling even, has so many regulations and hampering that, that's why I always describe, the electronics industry as being one of the closest examples we have of a truly free market. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the other things that happens with software developers, and I really appreciate this about this situation, is that we tend to think of the government as having unlimited power, like unlimited funding, right? They can hire the best of the best. They can do whatever they want. Well, there's a couple things that happen with software developers. Right, they can feed themselves, and so they're not looking for a handout. They're not like some insurance salesman that is barely making ends meet. If you're a competent software developer, you can write your own ticket. So it's going to be very hard for some government agency to lure them away to work on anything that's not interesting to them, because they have food, they have a nice house, they have the things that they want in life, and they enjoy solving problems. So you're gonna try to get them to go work for some agency to spy on people. You're going to try to get them to come work for some agency to build software to make paying taxes a little bit more efficient or make it harder to get away with not paying taxes. Like, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to do that. And if you have the money to not, you don't. So that's one of the problems that they face. The other big problem they face is that even if they could, they don't have the budget. Software developers are really expensive. Like, we are so super empowered that we have FU money really early in our careers now, and you would have to choke us with $100 bills to get us anywhere near that place, and they just don't have the money for it. They just can't afford us. So they've already lost the game just on that angle as well.
Right.
So, I mean, go ahead, try to hire my son when he's 24. Good luck.
Yeah, and the Hollywood industry is also trying very, very hard to try to propagate that notion that, you know, the best people and the brightest people work for the state, right? You see that all the time in movies. And yeah, and you gotta kind of when you watch a movie, you gotta suspend your idea of what reality is in order to appreciate, you know, most of the mainstream movies nowadays.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is getting more and more absurd. It's getting more and more disconnected from reality. And I think, you know, the good news is the further that the propaganda gets from reality, the less effective it will be, the more absurd and, you know, just apparently stupid it will be to all of us. So they're going to have to tone it back at a certain point. But yeah, you know, the other thing that's happening is, like, the conversation that we're having, the whole media is getting so decentralized because software developers took the time to write Skype, YouTube. Yes, you know, there's censorship and there's problems with it, but look, at least we have a battlefield now, right? We didn't even have a conversation before. Like,
right.
I would have to be trying to get on NBC or something to talk about bringing down the public schools and maybe, you know, maybe if I was on NBC and I got a 4-minute spot, which would be insane with some, you know, news, it would cost me easily $100,000 and I might have 2,000 or 3,000 viewers. We're probably going to get that from this, right? Like, you're going to put it out, I'm going to retweet it. We'll probably get 2,000 or 3,000 people to listen to this conversation, and it didn't cost us anything.
Right.
So it's definitely getting better, and it's getting much harder for them to do that. Independent movies, I think, are going to be more and more common because all of the technology that's required to make movies and those sort of things is more accessible as well. So, you know, soon Hollywood will be, that place where people used to make movies before it was so cheap and easy, you know, that it was not necessary to have government approval to build it.
Right. Yeah, it's getting more and more comical. But yeah, wonderful conversation, JW. Really appreciate it. So please, before we sign off, just reiterate the places where people can reach you if they want to follow your work.
Yeah, so mathbot.com, just go out there, sign up, play a couple levels. You'll get a much better sense of what we're trying to do. And, you know, there's no charge or anything, and you just create an account and boom, you're playing right away. There's no BS. So check that out. You can also follow me on Twitter at JW Weatherman _. I've got my YouTube channel and podcast. They're basically the same thing, but depending on which format you like, just go to either your podcast catcher or YouTube and search for JW Weatherman Show, and it'll come right up. And yeah, all of those are great places to reach out. And if you guys do check out MathBot, I'm always looking for feedback, what you did like, what you didn't like. I need a constant stream of that because these are really, really hard problems. And you'd be surprised how much it makes a difference if somebody just jumps out and says, hey, you know, I didn't know where to click. That can be a game changer. That can impact 500 people over the next month. So that's super helpful if that's something you guys are interested in doing.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned. Did I mention my son was doing the MathBot? I don't know if I mentioned this here, but yeah, he loves it. You know, he's very partial to logic and chess and mathematics, and so he really enjoys the programming aspect of it. And yeah, and actually, I had to, you know, because we do different things when I do the you know, the homeschooling time with my kids. You know, we alternate between different activities. But he didn't want to stop. He didn't want to stop doing that, and awesome. Yeah, he really did enjoy it. So yeah, looking forward to the updates and you know, seeing it improve. And And yeah, so one more thing I ask my guests before we sign off is, what is your favorite quote of all time?
Favorite quote of all time. Wow, that's not easy. How about whatever you do to the least among my brothers, you do to me?
Where's that from?
That's Jesus.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you do to say again.
Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, you do unto me.
Ah,
that's a little bit of King James flavor in the second version I hit you with. I threw an unto in there.
Nice. Old English. Awesome. Beautiful. I like it. Man of the people, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lessons. I mean, I'm not religious, I'm not Christian at all, but I certainly can recognize there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from religious texts and from, maybe the teachings of Jesus as well. So, I'm not above, learning from, religious places. I think we can learn from many places, right? So yeah, very
Absolutely.
Cool. So yeah, awesome conversation, JW. Really appreciate it. People, please follow his work and check out MathBot. I think you will be impressed, and it will help your kids and you to appreciate math and why the math they're teaching, or the so-called government math that they're teaching in government schools now is it's more than a waste of time. It's actually counterproductive, and in JW's words, diabolical. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, JW. So this is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network and theconsciousresistance.com and solpodcast.org. Wishing all of you have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more of it, please feel free to donate and help me interview other fascinating people. You can do so through Patreon. That's patreon.com/peacefulanarchism to help me out. $1 a show is all I ask. If you feel so inclined to donate more, please feel free. It will only assist me in spreading the message of freedom and voluntarism that much farther and that much more efficiently. You can also donate to my Bitcoin. My Bitcoin address is in the description to my videos, as well as on my website, peacefulanarchism.com. And while you're on my site, there's a donate button to donate through PayPal. If you prefer to donate through PayPal, you can do so with that. But Patreon is a little bit easier for content creators, as you can set up a recurring donation if you so desire. Also, while you're on my website, peacefulanarchism.com, please feel free to sign up, enter your email address, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll receive updates every time I post something, a video or an interview. I do not send out any spam. Or you can also follow me on Facebook under facebook.com/peacefulanarchism or facebook.com/Danilo Cuellar 3, I believe. Danilo Cuellar 3. So either one of those methods, if you are able to donate, I would be most appreciative. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a magnificent day.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.